Have you ever felt stuck in your growth journey, wondering how to build resilience in the face of challenges?
Or maybe you're looking to shift your mindset and unlock your full potential.
Well, if you said yes, then you are in the right place.
Welcome to the Stretch Zone. I'm Hannah.
And I am Feds.
And here we explore self-development, nurture resilience, and embrace the mindset shifts that help you grow beyond your limits. Hello and welcome back. Season 2 in flow. Hi, Feds. How are you today?
Hi, Hannah. I'm good. I'm so excited to be here, honestly. I missed you so much. I'm happy to see you, and I'm happy to have these great conversations again.
Yeah, me too. I've really missed our weekly get-togethers. Not that we haven't spoken in the last couple of months. We have.
But
we're always checking in. But we did have our little break, and now we're back into those warmer months of the year. I'm already sweating up a storm. Yep, it is steamy already.
yes.
How about where you are?
So I'm in Italy at the moment. It's getting hotter and hotter. So it's gonna be a different summer compared to the last
That's what you
17 years.
For.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully I'm not gonna
Italy.
regret it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna regret it.
So today's a really interesting one, something that we talk a lot about, but we're sort of being really specific about it today. Our topic is about the hidden cost of comfort, the comfort zone, as we sometimes refer to it. And today we're diving into the effects of how staying within our comfort zone can affect us, and how moving our way out of the comfort zone can also help us. So when we're talking about comfort, we're not just talking about a cozy bed or a cozy sofa, right?
Exactly.
We're actually really referring to it much more as our mental state of comfort. So if I'm thinking about my comfort zone, I guess my comfort in a mental state way would be getting up in a leisurely manner, taking my dog for a walk, easing myself into a day, only having to work maybe a couple of hours, seeing some friends, not having to test my brain too much, maybe have a little scroll on Instagram, do a little bit more work if need be, have another chat with friends, and then make some lovely food. That's me sort of planning out a wonderful, comfortable day. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could just live our life just like that, without ever having to push ourselves too far?
Oh,
That's my life. I would be, I guess, not living where I am. I'd probably be living in my parents' house because I couldn't afford to
exactly. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have enough money to travel. I would probably be somewhat stuck. So that's actually, when I really think about it clearly, my end thought process of what I've just talked about, my beautiful, comfortable day, means that I'm probably actually quite stuck in life.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It sounds like an amazing plan, an amazing day.
Someday.
But exactly. But as you mentioned, the comfort zone that we often talk about is not necessarily connected to comfort in the strict sense of the word. It is also connected to familiarity, what is known, what is your familiar place, your familiar environment, your familiar state of mind.
Yeah.
And often people struggle a little bit with this.
Yes, we all do.
Yeah.
Even those who class themselves as adventurous, which we might be as an outsider looking at our life, people definitely categorize us as adventurous. But I can wholeheartedly say I still need familiarity. I still need that sort of sameness. And that quite often comes up with creating routines for ourselves. So humans quite often need a routine, right? And that brings a sense of comfort to me.
Yeah.
But
There is a sense of comfort in knowing what's happening and knowing that we know what's going to happen. And
Hmm.
this can create a lot of issues in our comfort zone because our comfort zone is not necessarily a positive place to be. A lot of
Hmm.
people are in the negative comfort zone. As you
Hmm.
said, they are stuck. Maybe they are in a job they don't like, in a relationship they don't want. So there's a lot behind this. And I think it would be a good idea to start understanding, why does it happen?
Yeah.
Why do we put ourselves in these situations where we really are not happy,
Yeah.
but at the same time we are stuck, we can't get out? So I think it's important to talk a little bit about the brain as it is, so we can understand the mechanism behind it. And something that we discussed a little bit in the past is, well, what is our brain's number one job, right? And a
Hmm.
lot of people have this idea that it might be making us successful or fulfilled, or, all kind of goals that you may have. But in reality, the main job of your brain is to keep you safe, is to keep you
Yeah.
alive. That's
Yeah.
it,
Absolutely.
right? So
Survival.
yeah, so it needs to be efficient, not risky. You need to be safe. You need to stay alive.
Yes.
And so we go back again, we talked about evolution. And so thousands of years ago, the unknown meant real danger. You are in your cave, you don't know what's outside there. There might be a tiger, there might be a lion, there might be nothing. We don't know. And so anything that is unknown equals potential death.
Yes.
Now, of course, we're talking about millions of years ago, thousands of years ago. And however, this wiring is still there. We still have it in our brain. Every time we find something that is not familiar, something that is unknown to us, this instinct kicks in. And it's like a survival mode, right?
Hmm.
And so, why does it happen? Where we talked a little bit about the amygdala in the past, and let's
Yeah.
not get too scientific, but it's like this little almond shaped part of your brain, and it's really tiny but
Hmm.
mighty.
Hmm.
It is really like, let's define it, your brain's personal bodyguard.
Oh, I love that description.
And I've been using this a lot as well in language coaching. So every time you find yourself in a situation that is unknown, which could also be giving a presentation in a different language, moving to a different country that you are not familiar with, speaking with a person you've never spoken with before, your amygdala kicks in and starts telling you, hey, this is new. I don't like it. I'm not familiar with it. What are you doing? No, 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 no. So every time, even though it might just be emotional discomfort,
Yeah.
your brain doesn't really recognize the threat is the same. So the parts in our brain that lit up, whether we are in front of a tiger or whether we have to give a presentation, they are pretty much the same. So it tends to be a little bit of a dramatic reaction sometimes, and that's why panic kicks in. So
Hmm.
when people start thinking about, well, why do I go blank before a presentation? Why do I need to feel this discomfort when I think about changing my job? Why do I keep on procrastinating when I want to send out my CV? Well, because it's new. Literally. It's a challenge that you have probably never faced before, or maybe you have faced it, but many, many years ago. And so that uncomfortable feeling is just your brain trying to keep you into safety, which is your comfort zone. The problem is that, of course, back in the days, thousands of years ago, the threat was real. You could really find a tiger outside of your cave. Right now, it doesn't really happen. So our brain tends to associate new with unsafe
Yeah.
because that's what we are hired to do, wired to do. And so, just to cut the story short, we have to understand how we learn, how to manage these reactions, where they come from, so that we can flip the script and react differently, knowing why this is happening, right?
Mm.
Um, So yeah, at the end of the day, there's no tiger. It's just something new. It's just us
So
trying to
fascinating.
stretch a little bit our comfort zone without getting into the panic zone.
Totally. And I find this so fascinating because my body therapy background, I would talk a lot about this and I learned a lot about it. So it's really deep in our nervous system. Our nervous system hasn't caught up with evolution. It still stays the same. We still get really panicky and sweaty palmed and short breathed, just at too many emails in our inbox, right? And it's the same reaction to when we heard those unfamiliar sounds out in the wild at nighttime. Our body physically has the same reaction as it did thousands of years ago, and it's trying to really learn the difference of what is a true threat and what isn't. So fascinating. So fascinating.
And I think one of the main misconceptions about the comfort zone is that, as we said before, the comfort zone doesn't have to be comfortable. It can actually be a very painful place to be. But because we are so familiar, and the main example that I can think of is either a job that you really hate or a relationship that can also be dangerous for you. Like and this is the foundation of why so many people stay in this kind of relationships, professional and emotional, let's say. Because it's familiar. We know. We know exactly what we know, that we have maybe a crap boss. But we know that we have it. We know that we're going to get in the office and there is a very good chance that we're going to have an argument. He's going to probably shout to us. It's just like, it's different. It's a different kind of feeling compared to going into the unknown of sending out a CV.
And our brain can tell us worse things could be out there. You know, we know how to handle this terrible situation. It's like the phrase, better the devil you know. There's a reason for that phrase. We know how to handle this situation, even if it's super uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yes. So I guess we've all been in the comfort zone. Let's be honest. I don't know anyone who hasn't been in the comfort zone. And I'm curious to know what kind of experience you have with the comfort zone. Because people, as you said at the beginning, when people think about travelers, adventurers, people moving around the world. People tend to have this idea that, oh, you don't really have a comfort zone. You always get out of the comfort zone. Well, I mean, maybe it's a little bit easier, but we still have our comfort zone.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that?
Yeah, you know what? It's really fascinating because you would think that I might have, the amount of, I do not know how many places I've lived in. I've lost count. Like the amount of dresses I've had, it would take me quite an effort and I'd probably get it wrong. So I don't know how many places I've lived in. I can tell you what countries I've lived in, but then actual houses or apartments or addresses, I've lost count. At one point I did have a list because it's quite important for us to have. So I probably do have a list actually, now I think about it, but I need it to be updated.
Yeah, for bureaucratic purposes, you need to know.
There you go. I just remembered I actually have a very important document on my desktop that has a list. So I couldn't tell you offhand how many that is. I've lost count. And I haven't looked at it for a little while. And you would think that I had been brought up living this sort of gypsy lifestyle, so therefore I must be okay. But my parents still live in the same house that I lived my whole life in.
Yeah, here.
I lived with them until I went to university at 19. Was I 19? I took a year out. So lived with them until I was 19 and then did a short stint again in 2022 at the age of about 38. Wonderful pandemic year. It was years, but it was. But you would sort of think, well, where did that adventurous come from? But I'm guessing my father is Swiss. He moved to the UK, and then we would, as kids, as kids, not my parents as kids, we would take summer holidays that weren't officially planned. So my parents would know the weeks that we had off. It would be 2 to 3 weeks in the summer, and we would never have a really clear plan of exact dates of where we were going. We would pack up the car and we would drive over to France, to Switzerland, to Germany, to Italy. And those were most of my summer holidays. And we would just check in and see friends and family that they knew in those places. And I don't know if that's had a little influence. I remember, you know, they would book the ferry home when we were there, or you'd book the next campsite whilst we were there. They would maybe book one or two big things, but that was about it. So I don't know if that is an influence of how I am able to do what I've done. But I do find it fascinating that they still live in the same house that I grew up in. And I still get very nervous about moving to a new place, but something bigger happens that overrides it, which is excitement. So when I do go to that point of I'm about to go and move somewhere, I get super excited, and that actually I can start to imagine myself being there, and I turn it into this positive adventure. So I think I'm just lucky in that way. But there are things that are scary for me that I like to keep in the same sort of at the same comfort zone. I've been a yoga teacher for 13, 14 years. That is still something that I do, although a little bit of a break at the moment, but it's still in the background. Obviously now coaching is my foreground, I guess. And, you know, I stuck at that for a really long time. The idea of completely letting that go feels very daunting to me and scary. That's for sure. I don't want to give it up. I like it. There's something really familiar about it. I can bring that job, that career with me to new places. So that's my familiarity that I can bring with me. I've been in my relationship for 14 years. Again, that's something that I bring with me that keeps the comfort zone of familiarity with me. I've had my dog that I've brought with me for the last 8 years. There are things that I have to keep with me at all times. In terms of changing career, actually becoming a coach was a really big deal. And that was definitely pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And I know that lots of people can relate to that change of career being a big step. So, you know, walking away from yoga being my main focus as my career to being a coach has felt really daunting, especially because as a coach and the way that I'm working for myself. I'm basically having to be a business owner. So that was huge in terms of being, I think becoming an entrepreneur has been the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than moving to all these countries, that's for sure. Becoming an entrepreneur for me has pushed me out of my comfort zone in any way possible that I could have imagined. And it still does, obviously. But I've seen so much growth through that. So there are really low moments where you just think, what have I done?
Why am I doing this? Oh no, I can relate.
Why am I doing this? But yet I have so much drive and passion to keep going forwards with this, which has been new and eye-opening in terms of my character, in terms of who I am becoming. Yeah, it's exciting, but very scary.
Yeah, it is. I think that I was thinking about a couple of things while you were talking, and you were saying, well, the origins of being out of the comfort zone when you were traveling with your parents, and my situation is even worse in some senses because my parents were always very good at planning everything. And so I don't know where my desire to be constantly out of the comfort zone comes from. I literally have no clue. But I do have the feeling that a lot of it comes from a bit of boredom. Wanting to see what's out there comes from, for me at least, the awareness that there is something else out there.
Yeah.
And I know that life is short enough. I don't want to end my life not knowing what's out there.
Mm,
And that's what helps me stretch in my comfort zone all the time.
yeah.
I am very aware of the feeling I get when I am in my comfort zone, and it's not a pleasant feeling.
Yeah.
A lot of people um a lot of people spend a lot of time in their comfort zone. Some people love it. They are
Yeah.
able to stay in the same job for years. And don't get me wrong, there's a difference between stability and comfort zone. Because as you said, I want to have my dog, I am in a relationship. So we all have our key people, places that we want to have in our lives so that we feel stable. We have some sort of anchors.
Yes.
But you could get out of your comfort zone keeping those anchors with you, one way or another. Of course, if you are in a relationship or if you have a pet, you have some responsibilities, but it is not impossible to do it. You would be able to change your career. You would be able to do little things that take you out of the familiarity that is your everyday life. So I think a lot of people have this idea that getting out of the comfort zone means a huge step, but it's
Yeah.
not. Like, I remember one thing that really was extremely hard for me for some reasons. After I finished my bachelor, I started working immediately, and I was lucky enough to find a job that was fairly good. Very boring because I was a health and safety advisor. And I was 26, 27 at the time. I was quite old because I started studying at uni quite late.
Okay.
And so I don't know why, for some reasons in my mind, I was thinking, well, I found my job. I think this is probably, my parents, the way I was brought up, kicked in. I got a
Yeah.
job, got a degree, I got a job. That's it. I'm done. I'm not going to change anymore. And then I realized that I hated my job with passion. Like, I really didn't like it. On paper, it seemed really good because, you check hotels around Europe, you travel around Italy. Oh man, it was the most boring job ever. Like, everyone hated me because the owners of the hotels didn't want to talk to me because, of
Yeah.
course, they didn't want to have to deal with someone who might
You're like the
who
parking inspector.
who might have caused issues. The contractors hated me because every time they were worried I would have found some kind of issues with the hotel. So, like, I was in this very awkward position, and it wasn't really something connected to what I studied. And I was like, why am I doing this? But then the idea of doing something different, of getting out of what had become my comfort zone, really, it was really a struggle for me, a
Mm,
really, really big struggle. And I think eventually I got to a stage where I started thinking, do I want to be unhappy for the rest of my life?
yeah.
Or do I want to do something that can actually help me become the person I want to become? And so I went back studying, I got my master. I ended up doing something completely different because I studied events management, and now I'm a coach. So it's a language coach and a mindset coach. So it's something completely different. But I know that getting out of my comfort zone every single time helped me get a little bit closer to the person I am today.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what people struggle with often, like not
It's finding
knowing
that point of
exactly.
no return. So there's this, it's not that we're suggesting that people should just go out there and live every dream they've ever had. It's
It's calculated risk.
exactly, it's calculated risk to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and that's, I think, how I've taken most of those moments in life where I've pushed out of a comfort zone. It is definitely, I don't think I'm a reckless person,
Hmm.
even if I am able to be quite a flexible person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean physically flexible, I
Mm-hmm.
mean mentally
Mm-hmm.
flexible.
Yeah.
I think something that was really important that you had mentioned a little earlier on was that it doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be you have to change career. It doesn't have to be, you know, if you're happy in your career, that's amazing. But if it's that you're feeling a sense of dissatisfaction with your life in an
Yeah.
area of your life, then usually you're in some kind of comfort
Yeah.
of some sorts.
Yeah.
Um,
And you know, when you're talking about work, a lot of people may love their job, but maybe just simply they want a promotion, or maybe they want to work maybe in the same company, but in a different department, right? So it doesn't have to be a huge change, but it has to be something that takes you out of this lull, you know, of this
yeah,
feeling of boredom as well and discomfort.
I think that's it. It's that being in the comfort zone can feel very boring. So I think that we as humans have to find other ways to push our boundaries, and it doesn't have to be within career. It could be something totally unrelated, because every time I've pushed through a boundary of comfort, I know hands down that I have felt growth from within. I have learned something new. I have grown as a human, mentally.
Yeah.
So it's just really important to sometimes sit back and assess, okay, where in my life is there room for growth?
The
And
thing
what can
is,
I do to make sure that I feel stable in that?
exactly. And as you were mentioning, I mean, discomfort happens in both zones.
Yeah.
In the comfort zone and in the stretch zone,
Yeah.
there is discomfort regardless.
Yeah.
And so you have to pick what kind of discomfort you want to feel,
So
knowing
that really
that.
goes into what kind of things people can do to shift their mindset. Really, it's like a little practical tip that you've mentioned there. It's
Mhm,
about a shift of mindset when they look
mhm,
at that discomfort. How can
yeah,
you reframe that discomfort, and how can you use that discomfort to actually energize you and charge you forwards? So
yeah,
I feel very uncomfortable, still in the early years, because it's years of entrepreneurship. There are definitely moments where I still feel discomfort, and those are the moments where I have to really do some major self-talk and use a coach myself,
yeah,
to help me reframe a lot of the discomfort that I'm experiencing. And
yeah,
I think sometimes we're taught that discomfort is really a bad thing. Um, and actually, I'm not saying we should be wearing it like a badge of honor. Nothing like that. I'm never extreme in anything.
mhm,
um,
mm,
but I do think that putting a little bit of pressure on, and that is always different to every individual. Pressure looks different to you
yeah,
and it looks different to me. Okay. So just
mhm,
because I'm pushing myself to move overseas doesn't mean that has to be the same pressure that someone else needs to experience, you know?
no,
For me, being a CEO of a massive corporation would be
yeah,
too much pressure. I
yeah.
couldn't. That's
But then
out of
again, I mean, I think that people often forget that we get to, for example, you mentioned being a CEO, right?
my.
It would not happen that you wake up tomorrow morning and you wake up being a CEO, right?
No.
This is often something that we should get to with baby steps, right? We add something, we have these micro stretches every day where now you are the founder of your own company, you are an entrepreneur, and then
Yeah.
maybe in a couple of years maybe you're going to have a couple of people working for you,
Yeah.
and then two more people, and then two more people, and maybe in, I don't know, 5 6 years maybe you are going to be a CEO. But you get to that point by stretching your comfort zone. So, and that's exactly where our podcast, the name of our podcast comes
Yeah.
from, you know. So like if you get from your comfort zone and you jump out and you do something that you are not even remotely prepared to do, and it's different for each and every one of us, that's when we're going to feel panic. That's why, and it happens a lot with languages, like when people come and say, I'm not ready to do my exam, I just don't know what to say, my mind is going to go blank. And I'm like, well, okay, so how often do you speak English in your daily life? Never.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Then, of course, the idea of speaking with an examiner, I would freak out as well. And so
Yeah.
we have to understand how to get from speaking to no one to speaking to an examiner in the
Yeah.
most comfortable way. And this is applicable to every single thing. If you want to change your job and you have been in your job for 25 years, the idea of sending out a CV and being rejected, it's probably going to freak you out. So, of course, you're going to stay in your job. So, maybe the first step to stretch the comfort zone, maybe it's just to open your CV and update it.
Yeah.
That's enough.
And just as you were talking, just as a side note for listeners here, that is what coaching is for. So coaching is about steps that we can put in place to get you from A to B. It isn't about, hey, I want to run a marathon in a month's time, and we just talk for one session and I just tell you, hey, go and run a marathon tomorrow. It's about
Exactly.
all those little steps to
Yeah.
build you up to being able to run, first of all, 5K, then 7K, then finally you're going to be ready at some point. All the nutrition stuff that you're going to put into place, the recovery stuff, all these
Yeah.
things of action. So working with a coach is super helpful for cutting down a really big, overwhelming goal into little
Absolutely.
bite-sized chunks, not
Absolutely. Trunks, trunks and chunks. I think, I think, you know what, like you mentioned something that it's actually another tip that I think it's important. You don't have to do it alone. Like having a stretch buddy, someone who helps you. And in some ways, it is what we are doing with this podcast. We are stretching our comfort zones. We are putting ourselves out there, and we support each other. So
Yep.
having someone who supports you in when you're pushing your limits, that's fundamental. It's actually one of the most amazing things to have, in my opinion. And so look around, see if there's anyone who could be your stretch buddy, and then go for it.
And then talking about ideas of how we can push ourselves out of our comfort zone, something that I find that every human seems to just forget about is actually bloody celebrate when you've got to a point. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I celebrate once I've done that marathon. What about celebrating those little in-between points? As humans, we will quite often skip over the progress that we're making. I know I have to be constantly reminded about this, constantly trying to remind people around me, hey, that's amazing. Congratulations that you did this. Let's go bloody celebrate it. When was the last time you celebrated a small win?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I think the last time I celebrated a small win was when we finished the first season of the Stretch Zone.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the last time. Well, it wasn't even a small win, it was a big win,
Actually, a big win.
It was a big win. But as you said, I think we get so much entangled in all of these ideas of what we could do more, better.
Yeah.
And we always forget this. And so, just to recap these practical tips that we talked about. So we got definitely celebrating small wins, and I'm not gonna lie, it's easier to celebrate small wins if you have a buddy with you, because you can remind each other.
Doing it with someone is helpful. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Or just
Yes.
celebrating anything with one other person, even if it's your dog.
Yeah.
Just helps. It does.
Exactly.
You're
Exactly.
someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And take it little by little. Baby steps are still steps.
Yeah.
And they're going to take you far.
Reframe that discomfort. See if we can recognize that it is a sign of growth, not danger.
That's probably the hardest part because we are wired in a certain way. So
absolutely. Well, thanks for listening today. I'm going to throw back a couple of reflection questions at those who might be listening right now. So, where are you staying in your comfort zone right now? Have a think about an area of your life that you're feeling, pretty comfortable, and often linked with that is probably a sense of boredom, to be honest with you. Yes. And then what is one small stretch that you could commit to over the next week or two?
Yes. As always, we are on all the social medias out there. So you can find us on Instagram. Exactly, pretty much. You can find us on Instagram and on YouTube at the Stretch Zone _podcast. We're also on Threads, and I really invite you, come and talk to us. We can't wait to talk to you and see what kind of maybe even suggestions you have. Maybe you have some tips that you can share with us. And the next episodes, shall we tell them?
Yeah, the next episode is a bit of a funny one. It's about that feeling of being lost in translation. So we kind of thought we'd talk about that feeling of feeling out of our depth when it comes to maybe the language, when we've moved to a new place and we're having language fails that we can talk about, and also just cultural differences that we've been plunged into. We'll talk about funny little anecdotes that have happened to us, and again, you know what, we can learn from it. We can always learn from these moments. Looking forward to it, Beds. Thank you, as always. Have a
thank you so much.
Week.
You too.
Wrapping up today's episode, remember, you don't have to face change alone.
If you'd like to connect or learn more about working with us individually, reach out to us through our Instagram account at the Stretch Zone _podcast. Or find our emails in the footnotes to this episode. We're here to support you on your journey, each in your own way.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Stretch Zone. If today's discussion resonated with you, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with anyone who might benefit. Until next time, keep stretching beyond your comfort zone.